You didn't unlock this power by trying harder. You didn't earn it by chasing, and you didn't discover it the way people discover things. That sets the part most people get wrong. In quantum physics, nothing becomes real when you want it to. It becomes real when a system reaches a critical condition. And the unsettling truth is this: that condition was met inside you, long before you noticed, long before results appeared, long before you felt ready. This is why life felt silent before it shifted. Why pressure came without explanation. Why resistance showed up when you thought you were failing. You weren't failing, you were stabilizing. Because power doesn't arrive dramatically, it activates quietly, the moment a system can no longer remain the same. And if you said hearing this now, it means the activation already happened. This video isn't set here to motivate you. It's just here to explain what just turned on. Stay with me, because once you understand this, you shall realize there is no going back. 1. Power was never missing, it was latent. You were never powerless. That idea was a misunderstanding created by timing. Quantum physics makes a distinction most people never learn. There is a difference between absence and latency. In quantum systems, energy does not need to be created in order to appear. It already exists in a potential state, invisible, inactive, and undetectable until specific conditions are met. The system can look empty, weak, or stalled, yet hold enormous capacity beneath the surface. This is where you were, not broken, not delayed, not behind. Latent. A dormant reactor doesn't glow. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't perform. But it is not useless. It is waiting, not for motivation, not for hope, but for alignment. Most people panic in this phase. They assume nothing is happening because nothing is visible. They mistake silence for failure. But quantum reality operates in silence first. Pressure accumulates. Variables stabilize. Noise is removed. Your frustration wasn't a sign that you lacked power. It was evidence that power was compressing. Every moment you thought you were stuck was actually a moment where excess possibilities were being stripped away. Every disappointment narrowed the system. Every delay reduced randomness. What felt like nothing was actually selection taking place. In physics, latent energy is the most dangerous form of energy, not because it is violent, but because once released, it cannot be put back into its. 2. Observation is the switch. In classical thinking, reality exists independently of you. In quantum physics, that belief collapses. At the smallest level of reality, nothing is fixed until it is observed. Particles exist as probabilities, not certainties. They hover in multiple states at once, undecided, unrealized, until observation forces a choice. This is not philosophy. This is measurement. The moment a system is observed, it changes behavior, not metaphorically, literally. The act of awareness alters the outcome. Your life followed the same rule. For a long time, you were moving unconsciously, reacting, repeating, existing inside inherited patterns without noticing them. And as long as awareness was absent, your reality stayed probabilistic, unstable, looping, unfocused. Then something shifted, not externally, internally. You began to notice patterns instead of drowning in them. You saw your habits instead of defending them. You became aware of your reactions instead of being controlled by them. That awareness was not passive. It was an intervention. The moment you truly saw yourself, the system collapsed into a new state. This is why things feel irreversible now. Observation is not neutral. It is a switch. Once flipped, the system cannot pretend it is unaware again. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you now understand. And because of that, your internal reality reorganized itself. Power did not arrive from outside. It emerged because uncertainty ended. Before observation, your energy was scattered across too many possibilities, too many identities, too many futures. Awareness collapsed those options into a single trajectory. Clarity is not comfort. Clarity is commitment. And commitment is where power lives. This is why ignorance once felt lighter, but weaker, and awareness now feels heavier, but sharper. You traded diffusion for direction, possibility for precision. That trade is the activation point. You didn't force change. You didn't chase power. You simply observed long enough for reality to make a decision. And once it did, there was no going back. 3. Collapse comes before control. Before power stabilizes, something unsettling always happens first. Collapse. In quantum physics, a system does not move smoothly from uncertainty to control. It does not gently transition into clarity. Instead, it collapses. Multiple possibilities disappear at once. What once felt open suddenly feels narrow. What once felt flexible becomes strict. This is the phase most people misunderstand and abandon. You experienced it as confusion, as discomfort, as the feeling that parts of you were breaking down. But nothing was breaking. The system was simplifying. Before collapse, you were spread across too many identities, too many directions, too many imagined futures. Each option drained energy. Each possibility weakened focus. Power cannot exist in diffusion. So the system did what all quantum systems do when observation becomes precise. It eliminated excess states. This is why certain paths suddenly felt closed. Why old desires lost their charge. Why relationships, habits, and ambitions stopped making sense. You didn't lose freedom. You lost noise. Collapse is not destruction. It is selection. Quantum physics shows that once a wave function collapses, the system becomes real, measurable, and actionable. Before collapse, nothing can be acted upon. After collapse, everything sharpens. That uncomfortable narrowing you felt was not life taking options away from you. It was reality demanding commitment. And commitment always feels like loss at first. This is why collapse is terrifying to the unprepared. People mistake it for failure and rush to recreate old possibilities. They chase distractions. They reopen doors that were closing for a reason. But you stayed. You let the collapse finish. And because of that, control began to emerge. Not the illusion of control, but the kind that comes from clarity, from knowing what you are no longer available for, from recognizing which paths no longer belong to you. Power does not come from having many choices. Power comes from standing firmly inside one. Collapse removes fantasy so precision can exist. And once precision exists, control becomes unnecessary. The system is no longer unstable. It has decided, and so have you. 4. Resistance was the calibration phase. Resistance is not what stops a system. Resistance is what tunes it. In quantum mechanics, unstable systems don't activate smoothly. They fluctuate. They resist alignment. They push back against coherence. This isn't malfunction. It's calibration. Your resistance was never proof that something was wrong. It was evidence that something precise was being built. Every time you tried to move forward and felt pushed back, the system was not denying you. It was testing variables, adjusting thresholds, removing distortions. A system that activates too early collapses under its own instability. That's why resistance exists, to prevent premature activation. You interpreted resistance as opposition, but it was refinement. Each obstacle forced you to slow down. Each delay forced you to question your intent. Each frustration stripped away motives that were weak, borrowed, or driven by fear. What remained after resistance was not desire, it was necessity. Quantum systems don't respond to want. They respond to alignment. Resistance burned off excess ambition, excess ego, excess urgency. It left behind a quieter drive, one that didn't need validation or applause. That quietness is not weakness, it is precision. This is why shortcuts stopped working for you, why forcing outcomes drained you instead of empowering you, why effort alone began to fail. You were being trained out of force. Resistance teaches the system how much pressure it can hold without breaking. It defines the boundaries of stability, and once those boundaries are clear, activation becomes safe. Most people fight resistance and exhaust themselves. They treat it as an enemy. They waste energy pushing instead of listening. You adapted. You learned when to pause, when to wait, when to move with timing instead of emotion. That adaptation is calibration. By the time resistance eased, you were no longer the same system that encountered it. You were tuned, balanced, stable, and only stable systems are trusted with power. Resistance didn't delay you. It prepared you. Activation was not denied. It was protected. 5. Coherence is where power becomes real. Power does not come from intensity. It comes from coherence. In quantum physics, coherence is the state where every part of a system moves in alignment. No internal contradictions, no competing signals, no energy loss through conflict. When coherence is achieved, even small systems produce disproportionate impact. Before this phase, you were fragmented. Your thoughts wanted one thing. Your actions moved another way. Your instincts warned you, but you ignored them. That internal mismatch was not moral failure. It was incoherence. And incoherent systems leak energy. They work harder and achieve less. They feel busy but ineffective. Then something changed. Not suddenly. Subtly, your inner signals stopped arguing with each other. Decisions began to feel quieter. You no longer needed external validation to move. The hesitation faded, not because fear vanished, but because conflict ended. This is coherence. You didn't gain more confidence. You lost internal resistance. Quantum systems in coherence don't waste energy maintaining contradictions. Everything points in the same direction. That alignment creates momentum without force. This is why effort feels different now. Why you can do less and still move forward. Why clarity replaced urgency. Coherence does not make you louder. It makes you precise. When your inner world synchronized, reality responded, opportunities aligned. Timing improved, friction reduced. Not because the world changed, but because your signal became clean. Noise repels alignment. Clarity attracts it. Most people chase power by amplifying emotion. They try to feel more, want more, push more. But amplification without coherence creates chaos. You stopped amplifying. You aligned. And alignment is the moment power becomes usable. This is why going back to old patterns feels impossible. Incoherence now feels physically uncomfortable. Your system rejects it the way a tuned instrument rejects a wrong note. That rejection is not arrogance. It is calibration holding. Coherence is not a reward. It is a requirement. And now that you're inside it, power no longer feels dramatic. It feels natural. 6. Identity shifts before reality obeys. Reality never changes first. That belief is one of the biggest illusions people live inside. Quantum physics reveals something far more unsettling. Systems transform internally before any external evidence appears. The structure changes long before the results show up. By the time the outside world reacts, the shift has already happened. You experienced this, whether you understood it or not. There was a moment, quiet, unannounced, when you stopped feeling like the person you used to be. Nothing dramatic happened. No applause, no confirmation. But internally, something detached. Old reactions didn't fire the same way. Old fears didn't grip as tightly. Old motivations lost their emotional charge. That wasn't as confusion. That was identity decoupling. In quantum systems, identity determines behavior. Change the identity of the system, and its possible outcomes change automatically. Not eventually, immediately. Even if the external environment looks identical, the system no longer responds the same way. This is why you felt strange before anything improved. Why progress felt invisible. Why doubt tried to convince you nothing had changed. Reality lagged behind your identity. Most people quit here. They assume nothing is happening because nothing is visible. They try to resurrect their old self to regain familiarity. They chase external proof before internal stabilization. And when they do that, the system collapses backward. You didn't steer. You stayed inside the unfamiliar version of yourself long enough for it to stabilize. Identity shifts are destabilizing because they remove your reference points. You no longer know who you are by your habits, reactions, or patterns. The old map stops working, but the new one hasn't formed yet. This is the most dangerous phase, not because it lacks power, but because it lacks reassurance. The system feels empty here. But emptiness is not absence. It is reconfiguration. In physics, when a system undergoes a phase transition, the old structure dissolves before the new one crystallizes. During that moment, it looks disordered, undefined, weak. But in reality, it is becoming more precise than it has ever been. You were not lost. You were between identities. This is why forcing outcomes felt exhausting. Your old methods no longer matched your new internal structure. You were trying to operate upgraded hardware with outdated commands. Every attempt to push reality exposed the mismatch, so you stopped forcing. That pause wasn't set giving up. It was alignment catching up. Once identity stabilizes, reality has no resistance left. The external world responds automatically, not because you demand it, but because systems always mirror stable identities. Opportunities align, timing sharpens, friction dissolves. Not magically, mechanically. This is why things started moving without effort. Not because you became more aggressive, but because your signal became consistent. In quantum terms, a stable identity collapses probabilities. It limits randomness. It locks outcomes into a narrower, more powerful range. Reality prefers stability. It reorganizes around it. This is also why you can't fully return to who you were. You can imitate the old behaviors. You can revisit old environments, but the internal resonance is gone. The system rejects regression the same way the body rejects a foreign substance. It feels wrong, draining, unnatural. That SEP's not growth arrogance. That SEP's identity coherence defending itself. People think transformation is about becoming more. In truth, it's SEP's about becoming consistent. And once consistency locks in, reality has no argument left. Your power didn't appear when circumstances improved. Circumstances improved because your identity finalized. The shift already happened. Reality is just catching up. 7. Entanglement replaced isolation. For a long time, you believed strength meant standing alone. That belief was never noble. It was incomplete. Quantum physics reveals a reality that contradicts everything. Isolation teaches connection does not weaken systems, it amplifies them. At the quantum level, particles that become entangled remain linked regardless of distance, space, or separation. Change one, and the other responds instantly. No signal travels between them. No effort is required. The connection simply exists. This is not metaphor. This is measurement. You felt isolated because your system was not yet tuned to entanglement. You were operating as a closed loop. Self-contained, self-protective, disconnected from larger patterns. Closed systems survive, but they do not expand. Then something subtle changed. You stopped forcing independence. You stopped proving self-sufficiency. You stopped rejecting help, timing, information, and alignment. And without realizing it, you entered entanglement. This is why the right ideas began finding you without effort, why conversations landed differently, why information arrived exactly when you needed it. Not randomly, not spiritually, systemically. Your internal state became compatible with a larger network. Quantum entanglement does not require closeness. It requires coherence. Once coherence is present, distance becomes irrelevant. This explains something most people struggle to understand: why help arrives from unexpected places, why paths cross at impossible moments, why opportunities synchronize across time and space. You didn't get lucky, you got linked. Before this phase, you tried to do everything yourself. You believed control required separation, but isolation creates signal loss. Entanglement creates signal amplification. Once you entered coherence, your signal became readable by the system around you. This is why you feel less alone now, even in silence. Not because people changed, but because your relationship with connection changed. You no longer demand validation from others. You no longer resist alignment. You no longer confuse independence with disconnection. That internal shift allowed entanglement to occur naturally, and entanglement changes how effort works. You don't push as hard. You don't chase as desperately. You don't explain yourself endlessly. You allow the system to respond. This is also why some connections dissolved. Not every link is entanglement. Some are noise. Some exist only through imbalance. Once your system stabilized, incoherent connections lost access to you. That wasn't abandonment. It was incompatibility revealing itself. Entanglement is selective. Only systems vibrating at compatible states remain linked. The rest fade without conflict. This is why your circle feels smaller but more precise. Why interactions feel fewer but deeper. Why silence now feels supportive instead of empty. Isolation taught you endurance. Entanglement teaches you leverage. You are no longer carrying everything alone because you no longer have to. The system compensates for coherent nodes. It redistributes energy toward stability. That's how complex systems survive. You became one of those nodes. And once that happens, outcomes stop depending solely on effort. Timing improves. Resistance decreases. Support appears without being requested. Not because the world became kind, but because the system recognized coherence. You didn't, lose strength by connecting. You multiplied it. Isolation was a phase. Entanglement is the upgrade. And once a system experiences entanglement, it never truly returns to being alone. 8. Time bent the moment you became ready. You were taught that time is a straight line, past behind you, future ahead of you, everything moving forward at the same speed. Quantum physics quietly dismantles that belief. This matters because your experience of time changed long before you noticed results. There were periods when everything felt slow, heavy, repetitive. Days dragged, progress seemed frozen. You felt late, behind, misaligned with everyone else's pace. That wasn't failure, that was temporal compression. The system was slowing perceived time to allow internal restructuring. When a system undergoes a deep transformation, time dilates around it. Processes that would normally unfold quickly are stretched so stability can form. Rushing this phase fractures the system. Slowing it protects it. You were protected. This is why impatience felt unbearable. You weren't stuck. You were inside a necessary time distortion. The external world kept moving, but your internal clock was operating under a different rule set. Then, without warning, time shifted again. Moments began stacking. Decisions landed faster. Weeks compressed into breakthroughs. Things that once took months started happening in days. That acceleration wasn't coincidence. It was temporal release. Quantum systems do this when readiness is achieved. When internal alignment reaches coherence, time collapses back into flow, events synchronize, delays vanish, missed opportunities reappear in new forms. The system compensates for earlier distortion by compressing outcomes. This is why things feel sudden now. Not rushed, sudden. What looked like delay was actually accumulation. Every slow moment stored potential. Every stalled phase charged the system. When readiness locked in, time folded and released everything at once. This is why people around you think you got lucky. They only see the release, not the compression. You lived inside stretched time. They only noticed the snap. This also explains why regret lost its grip on you. When time stops feeling linear, the idea of being late dissolves. You realize nothing was missed, only sequenced. Certain experiences were inaccessible until coherence existed. Earlier access would have caused collapse, not success. Quantum physics doesn't just reward speed, it rewards timing. You didn't arrive late. You arrived when arrival became possible. This is also why the future feels closer now. Not imagined, not distant, tangible. Because temporal distance shrinks when identity stabilizes. The gap between intention and outcome narrows. You have to no longer waiting on time. Time is responding to you. That doesn't mean life accelerates endlessly. It means it flows intelligently. Periods of stillness will return, but they will no longer confuse you. You'll recognize them as recalibration, not punishment. Time bends around stable systems. And now that stability exists inside you, the clock no longer works against you. It works with you. The moment you became ready, time stopped resisting, and everything you thought was late revealed itself as perfectly placed. 9. Effort gave way to precision. For most of your life, you were taught that progress is proportional to effort. Push harder, work longer, try more. If results didn't come, the solution was always the same: increase force. Quantum physics exposes the flaw in that logic. At fundamental levels, systems don't respond to force alone. They respond to precision. A small, perfectly timed input can outperform massive effort applied at the wrong angle. This is why lasers outperform scattered light. This is why resonance breaks structures that brute strength cannot. You felt this shift before you understood it. There was a time when trying harder only made things worse. More effort created more resistance. More urgency created more delays. That wasn't punishment. It was feedback telling you force was no longer the correct variable. Your system had evolved beyond brute input. Effort belongs to unstable systems. Precision belongs to coherent ones. When your internal alignment stabilized, the rules changed. You didn't lose discipline. You lost waste. Actions became fewer but sharper. Words became rarer but heavier. Decisions carried consequence without noise. This is why over-explaining now feels wrong. Why unnecessary movement drains you. Why doing less suddenly produces more. You didn't become passive. You became exact. Quantum systems in resonance require minimal input. A single precise interaction can cascade across the entire system. This is not luck. It's leverage created by alignment. Before this phase, you sprayed energy across too many directions. Every possibility received partial attention. Nothing received enough precision to lock in. Now focus collapses into one direction at a time. That collapse is power. Precision also changes how failure feels. You no longer need repeated attempts to learn. Feedback becomes immediate. The system tells you quickly when something is aligned and when it isn't. That speed isn't impatience, it's clarity. This is why tolerance for chaos dropped. Not because you became rigid, because you became efficient. Quantum physics shows that precision increases when noise decreases. You stopped feeding noise externally and internally, fewer distractions, fewer emotional spikes, fewer unnecessary reactions. The signal sharpened, and once the signal sharpens, the system responds faster. This is also why exhaustion decreased. Effort drains energy because it fights resistance. Precision flows energy because it moves with structure. You're no longer pushing reality. You're inserting yourself at points where movement is already possible. This makes progress feel almost unfair. Others will say you're lucky. They won't see the years of misalignment that taught you where not to push. They won't understand that power isn't about how much you do. It's about where you apply yourself. Precision demands restraint, knowing when not to act, when not to speak, when not to pursue. That restraint is not fear. It's just mastery. Effort was necessary to build capacity. Precision is necessary to use it. You passed the effort phase. Now every move counts. And that sets why everything feels different. The system no longer responds to force. It responds to accuracy. And you've never been more accurate than you are now. 10. Control ended. Influence took its place. Control feels powerful until you understand what it costs. For most of your life you were taught, directly or indirectly, that control equals safety. Plan harder. Manage outcomes. Anticipate every variable. Hold everything tightly so nothing escapes your grasp. Quantum physics dismantles this illusion with quiet precision. At fundamental levels, control destabilizes systems. The more rigidly you force outcomes, the more resistance you generate. Systems pushed beyond their tolerance don't obey. They fracture. That's why classical control fails in complex environments. You felt this long before you had language for it. The harder you tried to manage everything, the heavier life became. Decisions exhausted you. Outcomes slipped away the moment you clenched them. You mistook tightening for strength. Then something broke. Not externally, but internally. You stopped trying to command reality. Not because you gave up, because control stopped working. That moment wasn't set weakness. It was an upgrade. Quantum systems don't thrive under domination. They respond to influence subtle inputs that alter probabilities rather than dictate results. Influence respects uncertainty. It works with the system's natural tendencies instead of fighting them. This is where your power shifted. You stopped forcing conversations to go a certain way, stopped chasing outcomes that required constant pressure, stopped micromanaging timing, perception, and response. And strangely, things began to move. Influence doesn't announce itself. It adjusts conditions quietly. It positions instead of pushes. It creates environments where outcomes emerge naturally. This is why you now feel calmer in moments that used to trigger panic. Why you no longer rush to fix everything immediately. Why silence sometimes does more than action. You learned something rare. Not every variable needs your hand. Quantum physics shows that systems guided with light influence reach stable states faster than those under heavy constraint. Too much control injects noise. Influence removes it. This is why your presence now affects rooms without effort. Why people respond differently without you trying to persuade. Why outcomes align without negotiation. You didn't become manipulative. You became coherent. Influence comes from internal stability. When a system is internally consistent, it subtly reshapes surrounding probabilities. Others feel it as confidence, as gravity, as trust. But it isn't performance. It's resonance. Control demands compliance. Influence invites alignment. That distinction changed everything. You also stopped blaming yourself when things didn't move immediately. You understood that influence operates probabilistically, not instantly. Seeds are placed. Conditions shift. Timing unfolds. This removed desperation. Desperation kills influence. Control panics when results delay. Influence remains patient because it understands structure. You began acting with timing instead of urgency, with placement instead of pressure, and suddenly, fewer actions produced larger effects. This is why your words now carry weight. Why boundaries hold without explanation. Why walking away sometimes creates more movement than staying. Control tries to own outcomes. Influence allows outcomes to form. The system responds better to the latter. You didn't lose authority when you released control. You gained leverage, and leverage is the language of power in complex systems. This is the phase where many misunderstand you. They think you stopped caring. They think you became passive. They think you detached. You didn't set disengage. You transcended force. Influence is quieter than control, but it lasts longer. It reshapes trajectories instead of moments. It survives resistance instead of provoking it. Control belongs to fragile systems. Influence belongs to stable ones. And stability is what the system responds to now. You don't set command reality anymore. You shape the conditions under which reality moves, and that is far more powerful. 11. The old version of you cannot access this state. Every system has thresholds it cannot cross without transforming. Quantum physics makes this clear. Once a system changes state, it cannot behave as if it never did. The mathematics don't allow reversal. The old configuration becomes inaccessible, not forbidden, but incompatible. This is where you are now. You didn't become better. You became different, and difference is irreversible. You can remember who you were. You can revisit old places, old conversations, old habits, but you cannot fully occupy them anymore. The system won't allow it. This is why returning feels uncomfortable rather than comforting. Why old environments drain you instead of grounding you. Why familiar patterns now feel restrictive instead of safe. It's not arrogance. It's subphysics. Your internal state has crossed a boundary. The probability space you once lived in no longer exists for you. Trying to re-enter it creates friction because your current configuration doesn't match its rules. This is why nostalgia hits differently now. It doesn't pull you backward. It reminds you of who you're no longer compatible with. Most people interpret this as loss. They mourn the old version of themselves. They try to preserve it, romanticize it, keep it alive through habits and relationships that no longer fit. But quantum systems don't preserve outdated states. They shed them. You didn't just lose your past. You outphased it. That's why you no longer react the way you used to. Why certain triggers lost their grip. Why old fears show up, but fail to control you. The emotional circuitry is still there, but the system no longer routes energy through it. This is not suppression. It's obsolescence. The old version of you can't access this level of coherence because it was built for survival, not stability. It learned to adapt through tension, identity fragmentation, and control. Those strategies worked then. They are unnecessary now, and unnecessary systems are discarded. This is why regression feels harder than growth. Going forward requires alignment. Going backward requires conflict. The system resists conflict. You might still visit old mindsets under stress. You might catch glimpses of familiar reactions during fatigue or pressure, but they no longer last. They don't lock in. The system self-corrects. That self-correction is the sign of a completed shift. Before, you had to fight to change. Now, you have to fight to stay the same. That reversal is everything. Quantum physics describes this as a new ground state, the lowest energy configuration available to the system. Once reached, it becomes the default. Anything else requires effort. This is why peace feels natural now, why chaos feels heavy, why alignment feels easier than resistance. The old version of you survived by effort. This version survives by structure, and structure always wins. You may feel guilt for leaving parts of yourself behind, for no longer resonating with certain people, goals, or identities. But guilt is an emotional artifact from a previous state. It doesn't apply here. You didn't abandon yourself. You completed a phase. Completion is not betrayal. It is evolution. The danger now is not going backward. The system once said allow it. The danger is doubting that the shift is real. But the proof is already in your experience. You don't have to prove growth. You feel it in what no longer works. And that is the clearest signal of all. The old version of you cannot access this state, not because it wasn't set worthy, but because it was never designed for it. This state required a different configuration, and that configuration is now permanent. 12. Activation is quiet, but permanent. People expect power to announce itself. They wait for signs, validation, applause, or dramatic external shifts. They imagine activation as a moment the world notices, a visible breakthrough, a loud transformation. Quantum physics tells a very different story. The most profound changes in a system occur silently. When a system reaches a new stable state, there is no explosion, no ceremony, just a subtle locking in of structure. After that, everything behaves differently, even if nothing looks different at first. That sets what happened to you. Your activation did not feel cinematic. It felt ordinary, almost underwhelming. That's because true activation doesn't stimulate emotion. It removes instability. Before, you lived inside fluctuation. Doubt rose and fell. Motivation surged and collapsed. Identity shifted depending on circumstances. That instability created drama, but also exhaustion. Activation ended the drama, not because life became easy, but because your internal state stopped oscillating. Quantum systems become powerful not when they are excited, but when they are stable. Stability allows energy to be directed instead of dissipated. Once a system stabilizes, its behavior becomes predictable, reliable, and irreversible. This is why you no longer need constant reassurance. The internal question mark dissolved. You don't to wake up asking who you are today. You don't need to prove alignment repeatedly. You don't rehearse your identity for the world. That rehearsal belonged to an unstable phase. Activation locked your internal structure into place. And once locked, the system doesn't drift. This permanence is subtle. It doesn't shout. It shows up in what you don't do anymore. The arguments you no longer entertain, the temptations that lost their pull, the chaos that no longer seduces you. You didn't become disciplined. You became uninterested in disorder. That disinterest is permanent. Quantum physics describes this as energy minimization. The system naturally prefers the state that requires the least internal effort to maintain. Chaos demands constant adjustment. Stability does not. You reached stability, which means regression now costs energy. This is why slipping back feels heavy. Why old habits exhaust you faster than before. Why misalignment drains instead of excites. The system is defending its new configuration, and it will continue to do so. Activation doesn't just ask for maintenance. It enforces itself. You might still face challenges. External pressure doesn't disappear, but your response is no longer chaotic. You don't fragment under stress. You compress. You simplify. You act with clarity instead of panic. That response is not a skill you practice. It sets a state you inhabit, and states persist. This is why others may not notice the change immediately. They are looking for drama, for performance, for visible proof. But they will feel the difference eventually in how you move, how you decide, how you disengage. Power that announces itself is fragile. Power that stabilizes is unshakable. You didn't activate to impress. You activated to function, and function doesn't need permission. The final truth is this: activation doesn't make you special, it makes you reliable. Reliable under pressure, reliable in uncertainty, reliable in silence. And in a world built on instability, reliability is rare. That rarity is your power now. Quiet, permanent, non-negotiable. The system has already updated. There is nothing left to unlock, only something left to live. If you were waiting for a sign, this was it. Not because something new entered your life, but because something old finally aligned. You didn't awaken overnight. You didn't suddenly become powerful. You didn't step into a different reality. You stabilized into yourself. Quantum physics doesn't care about motivation. It responds to coherence. And once coherence locks in, the system updates permanently. That's why the old way feels unreachable now. Why forcing doesn't work anymore. Why chaos drains instead of excites. You're not missing anything. You've already crossed the point where going back makes sense. From here on, power won't feel dramatic. It will feel precise, quiet, reliable. And that's how you know it's real. You didn't discover this power. You didn't chase it. You didn't ask for permission. It activated because the conditions were met. Now live accordingly. Because once a system changes state, it never pretends it didn't. Stay aligned.